Okay, good afternoon everybody. I'll make it 5 o'clock by the town hall clock. Thank you everybody for coming along to tonight's meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. If we can go straight onto the agenda. Item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. We're not expecting any alarms to go off, so if they do, we'll treat them for real. And we can evacuate the building straight out of this room and down the main stairs, through the foyer and across the road and meet up at the Yorkshire Bank. And if anybody needed any help to get out, if you give us a shout, we'll make sure that assistance is given. It's also a timely reminder to either turn your phones off or to put them on silent, and also to inform people that as well as the council recording this meeting, which normally goes out on YouTube a couple of days after the meeting normally, isn't it? I can see another camera in the public gallery recording the meeting as well. Item number 2, to receive apologies for absence.
Councillor James Sargent.
Okay. Any others? No? Item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday the 19th of February. Are you happy to assign those? Thank you. Item number 4 is to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interests in accordance with the members' code of conduct if they haven't already been printed on the agenda. Councillor Smith.
Yes, Chair, a potential conflict for me. I'm a trustee director of Bulkington Village Community Centre, and they had made an application on item 3 the new in for 106 contributions. As it happens, according to the agenda, those contributions are not agreed, so at the moment it does not become an interest. Should that change during the meeting, I would have to leave the room. Does that make sense?
It does.
I did take advice on it.
It is. It's interesting, and I shall ask a different question later. Not of you though. Councillor Beaumont.
Chairman, in light of the comments by Councillor Smith, I'm also a member of that same board and would have the same conditions applied should it change from the report.
Thank you. That takes us on to item number 5, declarations of contact. I'm not sure whether every member has, but I've certainly been contacted by residents on item 1, and also Councillor Keith Condor on item 1. I've had email correspondence from Councillor Smith.
Item 3 again, Chair. I've had communication with both residents on Oakham Crescent and the developers of the new inn. I haven't given an opinion on how I should vote today.
Okay, thank you. Well done. In which case that takes us on to item number 6, applications. Planning Commission, where the public indicated a desire to speak. If I just run through that for those people that haven't been here before, what will happen is when we get to that particular application, the officer will present the report. Following on from that, the people that are listed on the list that all members have got at the moment, there's been no additions or anybody taken off it, will be called in that order. Under the Constitution, you're allowed to speak for 3 minutes. I will be strict on that. When the egg timer goes off, I will stop you from speaking. However, if there's an opportunity for members to seek any points of clarification, it can only be clarification from something that's been said. Following on from that, when something's been moved and seconded, the matter will be open to debate by the committee, and hopefully a decision will be reached. I say hopefully, it doesn't happen on every occasion. Sometimes items are deferred for whatever reason, or things like that. But usually we do get to a decision. Right, that takes us then on to item number 1, which is land rear of 28 to 44 the long shoes. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. The applicant and officers request that this application is deferred from consideration at this meeting. Fire Safety of Warwickshire County Council have not removed their concerns to the scheme. Your officers did consider that a condition could be imposed to overcome their issue, but on further discussion with them, the condition suggested will not overcome Fire Safety's concerns, and further work is therefore necessary.
Okay, thank you. So we've heard that there's a request for deferment both by the officers and the applicant. What I intend to do, because I know there are some people here that are listed to speak, I'm happy that you can, if you still want to speak now, you can. It won't prevent you from, if the committee agree to a deferment, it won't prevent you from speaking again when it comes in front of the committee. So it's down to you as individuals, but because you've made the effort to come along tonight, I'm happy if you want to speak. So I'll go through the list of speakers that I've got, and people can decide whether to speak or save themselves for the next meeting. Like I say, you do get, in effect, 2 bites of the cherry. Councillor Troman. And I should say as well, I'm sorry, I normally say it and I've forgotten, if you feel happier sitting where you are, you don't need to come forward, but you can if you want. Councillor Troman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit concerned that we've got here, I don't know when these concerns were raised, but this is exactly the same Bellway 3 application as has been considered previously by this committee.
I'm sorry, Councillor Troman, it isn't the same.
It is materially the same, but has a different reference number. The items are being dealt with separately.
Councillor Troman, it's a different application.
Okay, so this incredibly similar application for exactly the same number of houses, referred to as Bellway 3, that is coming before it, as it now appears, has got meaningful objections that weren't known at the time that the very, very similar application for the exact same piece of land called Bellway 3 came to the meeting before. And the reasons it was rejected before are the same reasons that it should be rejected now. And they were very good reasons, which sadly weren't reflected in the when the notice was served on the applicant. And I hope that this time, and in any future hearings, the applicant will be properly advised. Just to remind members of the public and members of the panel, the primary reason for rejecting a almost identical application last time was because the numbers did not appear in the emerging borough plan's housing numbers. They weren't required to fulfil the borough plan target. And even if they were to be allowed, there was no meaningful way of them contributing towards the 5-year land supply, because there was no way to guarantee that the properties would all be built out in that time. And in fact, the evidence on the ground shows that the local area is saturated with development, having more than 10 live developments going on in a 2 square mile area. And so all it would be doing would be cannibalising the existing finite pool of buyers for the area. So I would hope that one of the committee members would move a motion to say that the correct reason, as was pointed out earlier by one of the committee members, should be placed on the record for the reason that this development was rejected last time, and I'm sure the video has again picked up on my confirming the exact same reasons why it should be rejected this time. I appreciate that it's likely that this matter may be deferred, but I wanted to get the matter on the record so that everybody was quite clear. As far as I can see, nothing has changed other than Fire have now come forward with their objections. All the other things that were raised before about the fact that the flood relief systems don't seem to be working right and wanting to preserve some green space, they were all valid additional aspects. But the primary reason that this was rejected by the panel at the time, and this should be recorded as the reason it was rejected and why it should be rejected if it ever comes back here again, is it is outside the emerging borough plan target
Thank you,
figures,
Councillor Traynor.
and the emerging borough plan has overwhelming weight.
No,
No, thank
Chairman.
you, Councillor Traynor. Melanie Allen.
Yeah, I would like to just re-raise the point that I raised at when the last application was considered, and that is, before this phase is started or even considered for planning permission, phase 2 should be completed. Those houses aren't selling, so why is that phase not redesigned to incorporate some of these smaller properties which are needed in the area? You yourself asked Mr O'Hanlon if the sales targets on phase 2 were being met, and he was very evasive in his answer, and you didn't push him to give a definitive answer. So I again think that the case for phase 2 to be redesigned has been proven. They are not hitting sales targets, so why even consider phase 3? Also, I've picked up that the last time a bat specific survey was completed was in 2012. Since then, this site has not been farmed as it was back in that year. It's become overgrown and potentially provides new habitat for bats which do exist, and we do have video footage of that. So it's a government guideline that a bat specific survey should be completed before this is considered, before this application is considered for permission. And that needs to be done. If it's not done, I believe the council is negligent in not requesting a bat specific survey.
Did you Are there any points of clarification? No. Mrs. Condon.
Well, my major concern was regarding this second emergency, having a second access, and obviously that's one of the things that's not been resolved and is the reason for asking for a referral. So I'll be very pleased to have it deferred until we can get that aspect sorted out. But there are other aspects as well. The air quality report finishes at the disused railway bridge by the Lidl on Hinkley Road, and that is just short of the air quality management area. So it's absolutely ludicrous that we've got an air quality report that doesn't actually include the air quality management area. And as anyone who knows that area and things, it's around the Eton gyratory, Leicester Road gyratory, whatever you want to call it, that the traffic is the slowest, the homes are closest to the road, and the greatest impact from air pollution is actually felt. So it's absolutely ludicrous that we've got an air quality report associated with this application that doesn't actually include the worst area. And traffic from there, it actually says somewhere in the report that traffic from the development would have to go through that AQMA in order to get to town. The report also has more traffic on Greendale Road, which is obvious, but then all the figures show less traffic on the A47, the long shoot, and all the other roads, which is absolutely impossible. Traffic cannot disappear. It's got to go one way or the other. It might not all go into town, it could all go out to the A5 and Hinkley, but it's got to appear on the figures. So the air quality report is absolute rubbish. It can't be correct. And as Mrs. Allen has already mentioned about biodiversity, the baseline from which it's measured is wrong, because when the measurement is that it was a chemically treated farmed field, and it's not been farmed for 5-6 years, and it's a wild area and things. So we've got a very, very different baseline from which to start. So those are the three main aspects, and I will raise those again if it were to come back in form.
Okay, thank you. Have you finished? Any points of clarification? No? Is there anything at the moment you want to come back on? In that case, for the moment, I'm going to test the water and see what happens. We've had a request for deferral from the applicant and the officers in regard to the comments from the fire and rescue people at the county council. I'd also like it's not down to officers; it's down to the committee to decide whether you defer it or not. But as part of that, I would also like to add, for reasons for deferral, is that it will provide some further consultation with local residents, because I know there's been some concerns that there hasn't been enough consultation on it, and I think because that's an addition.
Actually, yeah, no consultation.
Well,
No consultation.
well, I'm just, I can withdraw it if you like, but I'm trying to help you out. So are members happy to, well, that, hang on, that is what I'm putting forward. Is that
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, okay. Any member? No, in that case, all those in favour of deferring the application for the reasons I've just stated, please show. Let's do that. Okay, so we've deferred it. Will it be ready for the next meeting? But possibly not. But officers will be in touch with you when it comes, if you've indicated like you have today.
Can I actually ask that?
I'm sorry, no,
everybody's put an
I'm sorry,
objection in,
I'm
is
sorry,
notified?
if you could speak to the officers after the meeting. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to item number 3, please, which is the site of the new inn at Wilkinson.
This application is for the demolition of the New Inn pub on Rugby Road, Wolvie Road Junction in Bulkington, and the erection of 44 over 55 dwellings. As set out on the agenda, there have been letters of objection to the scheme.
Excuse me. Can I ask, if you want to have a conversation, could you do it outside the room, please? It's all right, I can't hear what's going on over here.
Do you want to start
Yeah.
again? This application is for the demolition of the New Inn pub on Rugby Road, Wolvie Road Junction in Bulkington, and the erection of 44 over 55 dwellings. As set out on the agenda, there have been letters of objection to the scheme, covering matters such as parking, design, access, highway safety, impact on healthcare facilities, and the impact on affordable housing. Officers consider that the key issues to raise are the housing need, supply, and the principle of developing this site, the loss of a community facility, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, impact from noise and odour, highway safety, and any potential planning obligations. Flooding is covered on your agenda, and I do not propose to add any further to what is already on your agenda. In relation to housing need, supply and principle of developing this site, it is accepted that at present the Council cannot demonstrate a 5-year deliverable housing land supply, and as such there is a presumption in favour of allowing development on sustainable sites, providing material considerations do not indicate otherwise. Government guidance is that housing need for all types of housing must be considered according to the Strategic Housing Market Assessment for this council produced in 2013 for Coventry and Warwickshire. This document indicates that there has been a growth in demand for housing for older people and there is therefore a demand for this type of accommodation within the borough. There has been a previous approval on this site for residential development in 2017, which members considered for the demolition of the pub and erection of 14 market dwellings in its place. This site is considered to be a brownfield site, and the redevelopment of this is considered acceptable. The previous application was approved. In terms of loss of a community facility, notwithstanding the fact that the committee have already considered in 2017 that the public house could be demolished, and the pub hasn't been used since that time, the NPPF requires councils to guard against the unnecessary loss of valued facilities, including pubs, particularly where this would reduce the community's ability to meet its day-to-day needs. There are other public houses in the village, and as such, it cannot be proven that the loss of this facility will impact the community to a significant extent to warrant refusal of the application on this ground. The site is adjacent to residential properties. In particular, access to the site is off Oakham Crescent to the side. Here is Oakham Crescent. This road is home to a number of residential bungalows, which are council run and a community centre. The properties closest to the development are number 3 Oakham Crescent, which is this property here, and number 35 Rugby Road, here, which is a flat above some shops. There are no habitable room windows overlooking these properties in the proposed development, and the development fully complies with the residential design guide in relation to impact on these properties. In relation to the impact on visual amenity, the proposed development is of 3 connected blocks of apartments of 2 and 3 stories in height. If I go back to the previous plan, you can see that there is this block here, connected by a central area, another block here to the front, and then a connected block to the rear here. There are 2 blocks that face out over the roads. So this elevation at the top is the elevation to Wolvie Road, and this central area is the area in the middle of the 2 connected blocks, also replicated here. And this is the elevation to Rugby Road, with a lower 2-storey on one side and the same lower 2-storey on the other side. Each of the 3 blocks are 3 stories in the centre, 2 stories at the ends, where they adjoin existing residential development. This helps to reduce the massing of the development. The design is modern, but it does draw on some of the elements in the local street scene in order to blend with the local area, such as the use of red brick and the use of render. 3-storey development is not actually unusual in Morkington. Just over the road, in New Street, there are several blocks of 3-storey apartments, which this photograph shows. In relation to noise, a noise impact assessment has been submitted, and this has been assessed by the Council's Environmental Protection Team. They agree with the findings of the report, that whilst the site is relatively noisy as a result of the road traffic in the area, so the site itself, you can just see the existing pub here. It's at the junction of Rugby Road running down here, Wolvie Road going along there, Withybrook Road there, Shilton Lane going off that way, and New Street here. So it's a complicated road junction. So the site is relatively noisy as a result of that amount of traffic in that area. It does propose mitigation measures, and the Environmental Protection Team consider that these are acceptable in order to control the level of noise. A condition is suggested on your agendas. In association with this, odour must also be considered at this site. In the parade of shops on Rugby Road, which is just here, you can see there is a hot food takeaway, the Fishnet Fish Bar. The extractor for this is located at this end of the parade of shops, the furthest possible place it can be from the application site. Environmental Protection consider that the wind direction could mean that odour is potentially carried towards the application site, and have such requested that a whole building ventilation scheme is used as an effective solution. This would also help mitigate against the noise, and this is covered by a condition on your agendas. Vehicular access to the site is proposed via Oakham Crescent, this road here. It's a narrow road serving a number of council-owned bungalows and the community centre. The community centre or hall is just at the back of the application site here. There's also to be a pedestrian access point to the front of the site, here. This site is, as I said, located at the corner of a busy road junction of Wolvie Road and Rugby Road and other associated roads just off these roads as well. In order to overcome highway concerns that were originally raised about potential for people to park here, dropping off people to get into the site, at the front pedestrian access is being controlled by a key fob or remote entry, which only residents will actually have access to. There is also no intercom at this doorway, so residents can't remotely allow people into the building from this point. Vehicular access is solely from the rear in this location off Oakham Crescent. There is a footpath from Wolvie Road down to the application site here, down to the vehicular entrance. There is no scope for providing a footpath beyond this down towards the hall. So the developer is providing a crossing location which is uncontrolled, so this will encourage pedestrians to move to the other side of the road rather than walk in the highway, being unsafe getting down to the hall. Due to the narrowness of Oakham Crescent and the fact that there are vehicles which do park along it, access to the site from large vehicles will be difficult. A condition is therefore suggested that restricts the size of the vehicle entering the site to 8.68 metres in length. Now this means that a standard refuse vehicle cannot enter the site. Officers have spoken to our refuse and cleansing team, and they confirm that whilst we do have a refuse vehicle of this relevant size, they cannot guarantee that there will be capacity on the round for this development. The developer is therefore happy to secure the removal of waste from this site on a private basis, and this will be covered in a legal agreement. There are 45 parking spaces proposed for the scheme, all to the rear. This is one per dwelling and one visitor space. None of the parking spaces are allocated to a particular dwelling. The site is in a sustainable location just outside of Bulkington Village Centre, where there is a range of facilities and is adjacent to local shops and a bus stop just further round here on Rugby Road. On this basis, it considered that the level of parking is acceptable. Highways have confirmed that they do not have any objections to the scheme presented to you today. There have been requests for legal obligations for payments towards a variety of facilities which are set out on your agenda and for the provision of affordable housing. However, the developer has submitted a viability assessment, and this confirms there is very little profit in the scheme and it's not possible to contribute to all of the requests or to provide affordable housing. In fact, it indicates that there is only a £56,000 surplus in the scheme. As such, officers have had to make a decision as to which of these requests is the most important, and we have suggested to the developer that the provision of affordable housing should be the council's priority. The developer has confirmed that their business model doesn't support the provision of affordable housing on site. In addition to this, the level of surplus that is in the scheme is not enough to allow one apartment to be purchased for affordable housing, even at build cost, or for the developer to give one apartment to a registered social landlord to manage. In addition to this, we have spoken to our own housing team, and they have confirmed that it is highly unlikely that any registered social landlord would want to take on one apartment in a large block where they don't have any other properties to manage, as it would be logistically difficult for them to manage and maintain and be bound by all of the restrictions that the developer or owner of the scheme would place on them. The developer is therefore going to enter into a legal agreement with us to pay £56,000 to the council to go towards the purchase of a property for affordable rented accommodation off-site. This is either to be in Bulkington, which is the first choice, and if it can't be provided in Bulkington, then in the surrounding wards of Whitestone, Attleborough, Bede or Poplar. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the completion of the legal agreement and the conditions as set out on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Ben Cook.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee for this opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Ben Cook and I'm the planning agent from Pegasus Group, acting on behalf of the applicant, Coin Group. The application site at the New Inn has been vacant since 2015 and in this time has attracted unwanted antisocial behaviour, including fly tipping and vandalism. Coin Group has demonstrated its commitment to the positive redevelopment of this brownfield site throughout the process of this application. They engaged in pre-application advice with the council as far back as May 2017 and have also met and maintained a dialogue with local residents throughout the evolution of this scheme. In the 10 months since this application was submitted, Coin Group have continually worked proactively with the council and the relevant consultees to resolve all issues and concerns raised in respect to the development, resulting in the application before you this evening. As set out on the officer's report, the site is allocated for residential development in your emerging borough local plan. This development will provide for much needed dedicated homes for over 55s in the context of evidenced need for elderly persons housing and in the absence of a 5-year housing land supply. This development will therefore result in real tangible benefits for the local community. If planning permission is granted here this evening, Coin Group intends to develop and operate this scheme within their wider company umbrella, ensuring the long-term operation and management of this scheme for the benefit of the community. The accommodation will be provided across a variety of tenures, including purchase, shared ownership and rent, allowing those from all financial backgrounds the chance of moving into and benefiting from the development. Condition 18, as set out in your office report, prevents the development from being occupied by those under the age of 55, ensuring that the homes remain for their original purpose throughout the lifetime of the development. Your officer's report details how the matters relevant to this development have been considered, including residential amenity, visual amenity, design, flood risk, drainage, site access, highway safety and planning obligations. Ultimately recommended that this application be approved. It is therefore respectfully requested that planning permission be granted here today in line with the officer's report, subject to the conditions set out in the report and the completion of a legal agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? No. Okay then. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pomfret.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the various forms of tenure, and that Coin Group would be have a long-term view of managing it.
Yes.
So, other than managing the rents and dealing with residents' issues, would the Coin Group have any other aims in mind?
Well, in terms of the way the site would run on the ground, there's not a plan up in front of us, but effectively there's a reception area where there would be a staff, a full-time member of staff who mans that reception. So in terms of direct contact for residents or other members of the community, that would be their point of contact. It wouldn't necessarily be, say, a phone call to the Coin Group. But in terms of their aims, I mean, it's a site that the Coin Group have owned for a number of years now, and they want to see it redeveloped. And like I said, it's a brownfield site that residents are quite keen to see something done with, because, like I said, there are a number of issues on the site. I mean, at the minute, I think one of the fences has been damaged and that sort of thing. So.
Can I? What I'm trying to get at is Coin Group's going to provide a reception person there.
Yeah.
That's to deal with residents' issues and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So what sort of role would they take in the running of the site? Are they going to retain responsibility for the maintenance of the roof, walls?
Yes, sorry, so yeah.
The parking?
Yeah.
You know, I noticed there's some common areas.
Yes. Yeah.
What role would Coin Group be having in the running of those, for example?
Well, I believe that the day-to-day management, so cleaning, etc., maintenance, as you say, that would be Coin Group, I imagine, would to go through a management company. And that would be controlled through the 106 agreement that we've not yet completed.
Right. So what I'm trying to get at is the communal areas.
Yes.
Who would be responsible for that? Coin Group,
management
or
company.
would they?
The management company that Coin Group was.
Right. And some sort of partnership with the residents board, it seems. Or getting their...
The residents were responsible by and large for cleaning their own flats, but
Right.
the communal areas would be through a management company, yeah.
Right, okay. I'm a bit clearer. Well, thank
Sorry,
you.
I didn't quite grasp your issue question,
Right,
sorry.
so sorry about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other points of clarification? No? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay then, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and conditions printed? Is that seconded?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you. Any member? No? Recommendation? Sorry. Councillor Smith.
A bit of clarification, this is a difficult site. I think previous iterations have struggled to make it profitable to build on it. Concerns for residents are the loss of parking spaces by the entrance where it comes out onto Oakham Crescent. Along that stretch of road, particularly I think there are a couple of disabled people parked there. Can you tell me what the treatment is to that end of the road opposite the exit from the... is it going to be yellow line there to give more space? Or?
No, that was an iteration in the development of the application, but Highways didn't support that. So there is no amendment to that highway. In fact, the reason that the access point is changed and we've got a condition restricting the size of vehicles is because of the parking on the site. Unfortunately, residents don't have a right to park on a highway, but there is no proposal to change the white lining or the traffic regulation for Oakham Crescent to stop them parking there.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I did note the same objection from the Highway Authority, but on the addendum they've removed their objection, which always makes life difficult for us, doesn't it? Yeah, any other member? Councillor Wilson.
Chairman, sorry.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Highways was the issue which I was particularly thinking of, mainly to do with all the junctions in such close proximity to the site, and especially given the diversions which are in place at the moment, given Lutterworth Road. I know it's particularly more of a difficult place at the moment, given everything that's going on. But when I look at the site, given its current usage, if it was to be a fully operational pub, which is quite difficult in the current climate, there would probably be more vehicular access to and from the site than what we're considering approving now. And even probably, if the pub is running as any pub manager would want to be, a booming pub, there will probably be people parking around outside of the parking spaces which are there. And I know that's an issue around other pubs, which there are. I have one in my own area where that's a problem, parking along the side. So whilst I share some of the concerns about highways, if they've removed their objection, and I think about the original site usage, then I think on balance it's probably a better usage for the site. A, it's bringing the site back into use. It is an eyesore. I think at one point Gypsy's trying to get on there, Gypsy Travellers trying to get on there at one point, which caused a problem. So the sooner something, if it's not going to be a pub, what do you do with the site? And I know that's a problem we consider. I think there was one a few years back, Chair, in Collycroft, which was another similar issue where you're not going to pay to keep something open. You're not going to work your guts out to keep something open if you're not making a profit. So it's a difficult one. So do we bite the bullet, bring the site back into use, and give something back to the community? Because I know there is a large preponderance of people over 55 in the Borkington area, and Borkington's a desirable area. So would that free people up to, with the houses people want to downsize and help with that way too? So I think on balance, it's probably a good thing. Highways is still a concern, but if you think about what it used to be, it's probably better than what it was if it was fully functional. So I'll support this, Chair.
Councillor Bowman.
Chairman, I defer to Mr Wilson. Councillor Wilson here, I think he said just about everything I would have. The only thing I would have pointed out is that on previous plans for this site, the car parking inside the site was actually designated public. Now, I don't think that's going to happen with this development. It'll be private parking for residents only within that complex, I presume. So, I've no problem with that. I thought being public was a bit daring,
Yeah,
really.
I remember now you've said
Yeah.
it was over towards the shops where that
Yeah.
would be.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, any other member? All I was going to say, I fully understood what Councillor Smith was saying. When you go round that corner, it's very narrow into Oakham Crescent. And I think it's the first time I've ever seen us put a legal thing on about that they can use a private company if we can't supply the service, but that doesn't make sense. Anyway, if there's no other member, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to a legal agreement and the conditions printed. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Which takes us on to item 4, 54, Hayes Lane, Exon.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for single-storey extensions to the side and rear and a change of use of 54 Hayes Lane to a residential care home. The property is located in a residential area close to the crossroads of Armston Road with Hayes Lane and Blue Mill Road. The property itself is a detached bungalow within a fairly large garden plot. As you will see from the agenda, there have been 9 objections to the proposal on the grounds of highway safety and parking, potential occupants, noise and disturbance, storage of medication, impact on wildlife in the boundary hedge. Officers consider that the key issues are housing need, impact on residential amenity, impact on visual amenity, and highway safety. As with the previous application, government guidance is such that local or planning authorities need to count housing for older people, including that which is a residential institution as proposed here within their housing requirement. It is also clear that from the strategic housing market assessment that the population of the borough is ageing and there is a need for this type of accommodation. In relation to residential amenity, there are likely to be more comings and goings to and from the site from the proposed use compared to a conventional domestic property. However, this is showing only 10 residents and under planning permitted development rights, 6 residents could be accommodated within the property without the need for a planning application to be submitted. In reality, the consideration is whether the additional 4 residents would provide for an additional level of noise and disturbance to warrant a recommendation of refusal. There will be 2 full-time carers on the site during the day and 1 at night, limiting the potential for noise and disturbance. There are other staff likely to be on the site, providing meals, cleaning and general maintenance, which would add to the level of comings and goings. There are to be 3 parking spaces provided to the rear of the property, which you can just see in this location. So the entrance is here, and then they'll come round the front, down an access road, and 3 parking spaces at the rear. Down the side boundary here with 52 Hayes Lane. Number 52 is the nearest property to this access road and is separated from the application site by a hedgerow between the properties and the rear parking area. So you can see from the photo to the rear, this house is number 52 Hayes Lane, and beneath there is the hedge that separates the 2 properties out. Environmental protection don't have any concerns over the level of comings and goings affecting number 52 Hayes Lane. And whilst a fence in this location would be advantageous to protect from noise and disturbance, the fact that the neighbour wants to retain the hedge and there are only 3 parking spaces to the rear, they consider it's not sufficient for noise to be an issue. The nearest properties on Windmill Road, which are to the other side of the site, are separated from the site by a pedestrian footpath, which you can see here in this photo, and a disused driveway. That garage that you can just make out on that photograph is that garage there. So there's an awful lot of undergrowth and things that is actually blocking the use of this area. The impact on these properties is minimal from the proposed development. The properties to Parkview Close into the rear of the site are separated from the development by their own gardens. These are the properties in Parkview Close to the rear of the site. Now there is a proposed sitting out area here which is set within a courtyard created by the extensions to the property. This is located approximately 19 metres away from the Parkview Close properties. It's not considered that there would be any undue impact on any of the nearest neighbours from the use of the building. The proposal is compliant with the residential design guide in terms of separation standards to neighbouring properties, and as the proposed extensions are single storey, any issues of potential overlooking from habitable room windows can be mitigated by the erection of boundary fences. In relation to visual amenity, the extensions are designed to be reflective of the existing property, but to add some interest to the front elevation by the use of gablets, which are these little triangular things, particularly above the front entrance door. Materials are to match the main dwelling, and it's not considered that there will be any unacceptable impact on visual amenity. In relation to highway safety, County Highways have no objections to the scheme before you. A number of objections have been received relating to the level of parking on the site. There are 4 visitors parking spaces to the front of the site. These 2 are also able to be used for disabled parking with the extra area between them. The Council's supplementary planning guidance on parking is not a safe document due to its age, but we do use it as a rule of thumb or a guide relating to the number of parking spaces required for each use. This states that we would expect 1 space per 4 staff and 1 space per 4 residents. The proposal easily complies for this, as it provides for 3 designated staff spaces at the rear of the site and 4 spaces at the front for visitors. As Highways have not objected to the scheme, it's considered that there are no grounds to refuse the application on highway safety. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions as set out on your agenda. Thank you.
Mr Dudley?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Dudley. I live at 55 Hayes Lane, which is opposite Factory, to be considered. It kind of seems like my speaking here is a bit of a waste of time, because it seems like the council has already decided that the 5-year need for housing top trumps everything else by the sound of things. The change of use is to C2. I understand that there's a need for housing, but my concern is it won't be little old ladies or little old gentlemen that will be in that property, because it also means that reformed drug users and alcoholics can also be housed there. Bear in mind that house is about 200 to 300 yards away from the local school, and that school children are walking past that property all the time. I'm sure that if there were reformed alcoholics, etc., it wouldn't be the right kind of people for them to be mixed on with. There was 9 objection letters, and I know that I've been approached by a lot of my neighbours to come and speak. One of my neighbours is with me at the back there. He is younger than 52, and he notes that on your drawings, which we've seen today for the first time, they plan, for example, to remove the hedge. It's his hedge, he knows nothing about it. So there's things going on. I mean, I saw this document for the first time today. I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware there had been so much consideration gone on. I thought it would all come along, it would be discussed today. So I'm a layman, I'm not a planning professional, I don't know anything about this. But there is a fair objection within the residents. Some couldn't be here, unfortunately, but I am. If it was being turned into 3 terraced houses or something like that, need for 3 families, I could understand that. One of your colleagues says that a house there would have maybe 6 residents. I agree with that. But 10 people in that property means 10 families. It means 10 families will be coming to see their next of kin who are living there. That's a consideration for me, more traffic in the area. In the past couple of months, there's been 4 bad accidents on that junction. I live there, I see it. You did work on a property number 48. The tradesman couldn't find anywhere to park outside because it was so busy down there with buses and lorries going down there. In addition, that property, Hayes Lane, is a rat run. When people come down the Coventry Road and it's all snarled up because of the traffic coming down Bayton Road, they cut through down Hayes Lane, along Wimble Road and go into School Road that way. So it's a hell of a rat run. So there is a hell of an impact on traffic, albeit the highways agency who don't live there don't see that, do they? It only happens a few times a day. So we object strongly to the proposed plan application, but it seems like it's going to go ahead anyway. I'm finished.
Well, all I'm saying that it's a democratic system. There's always a recommendation given by planners because they have to give a recommendation. It's up to the committee whether they agree with that recommendation. And like you, the committee are lay people, these are the professionals. But in regards to your point that you made about the document, I don't believe there's any difference to the document that's here as what was consulted on. No? Okay. Right, thank you. Are there any points of clarification? No? Sorry, did you put on? Right, no. Okay, thank you. Right. Anything to come back on the moment, Claire?
Just to confirm that in relation, Mr Dudley made mention of the loss of the hedge adjacent to number 52. That was discussed during the consideration of the planning application. Environmental Protection said it would be better if there was a fence there, but because 52 wanted to keep their hedge, they assessed it again and said that it wouldn't be a problem and the hedge can remain. They are not proposing to remove the hedge as part of this application.
Right, thank you.
It's shown on the drawing as being removed.
Didn't say anything on there. Anyway, to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation which is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions printed? And there's a slight amendment on the thing, it's about dates. Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any member? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a few points of clarification from the officers, if I may. Firstly, it says that it's a change of use to care home. Is the applicant doing it as a care home for elderly people? Is that information that we're
It's
aware of?
not something
I know
we
sometimes
need to assess the application.
I know sometimes they tell us, sometimes they don't. I didn't know whether
They haven't supplied that information.
The other question I had, Chair, if you could put the footprint slide back up again. That one. It might be my eyes, but is that overlaid with the existing footprint as well? Is that
The red dotted line
bit
is the existing footprint of the building.
That's what I wanted to clarify, Chair, because I couldn't quite make out whether it was my eyes or not. So, thank you, Chair.
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see that now. It makes more sense to me now.
Right, does anybody need that point in there? Any other member? Can I just ask? I want to go back to the hedge, because it's particularly interesting, because clearly it's got a benefit at the moment. Who does the hedge belong to?
It's unclear as to who the hedge belongs to. We believe, we're not 100% certain, we believe it's a boundary hedge that is owned 50-50.
Okay.
So they could remove half of it, but as I've said, they are not proposing to take things out.
You could do that. No, I'm sorry, I can't. I want to ask a question. Is it reasonable for us to request that, because I think there may be an issue, if there's concerns about noise and fumes, I would like, if we can, to add a condition that the fence be constructed on the applicant's side of the hedge. So the hedge is retained because it's got a benefit, but in some of the planning terms we're told to ignore trees and hedges, because they could not be there at some point. Now obviously if it were taken out, somebody would have to put something on the boundary. But is it reasonable to ask for a condition to be put in that a fence be constructed along the line of that existing hedge for the hedge to remain, but a fence to help alleviate any noise or fumes.
I think it results in a number of complications. In order for it to be a decent noise mitigation, it will need to be a solid boundary fence, which means that they won't be able to get to the hedge to do any maintenance of it, and it will become overgrown, and that could cause problems in itself. There are other problems in that the site is quite tight, and if I just point out to you on the plan, the hedge is quite thick in relation to this application site. If you look at where the access road is coming in here, it is incredibly tight to the fence. We have investigated whether we could get a fence as well as the hedge in, and we think that it would, to get it in properly, they would have to remove some of the hedge. And because the neighbour at 52 wanted to retain it, Environmental Protection have said it's not that many vehicular movements. If it was a house anyway, they could have access down the side to a rear garage. It's not that different from a real house. I was just trying to find a way of... Yeah, we don't think there's enough space to get the fence in without requiring the removal of the hedge.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If not, the recommendations as printed on the agenda and on the addendum. All those in favour of that? And against? 2. Okay. So that's approved. Thank you. If we can then move back to item number 2. Which is Church Street, Mill Street, Vicarage Street.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of 51 retirement living apartments with communal facilities, landscaping and car parking on the former car park on the corner of Church Street, Mill Street, Vicarage Street, Nuneaton, just out those windows. There are 26 one-bedroom apartments and 25 two-bedroom apartments. Members may recall considering and approving a planning application for a very similar development of 50 retirement living apartments in February last year. There have been no letters of objection to the proposal, and the application is being reported to committee at the request of Councillor Jill Shepherd. As members will be aware, the approved development of 50 apartments is currently being implemented on site. The proposed application is for one more dwelling and doesn't make the building any bigger, but does change the use of an upper floor communal lounge to an additional apartment, and there are associated elevational changes in providing different windows to the rear elevation. There are still communal facilities provided within the building in the form of a large lounge area at ground floor. The principle of having development on the site is already established by the approved planning application for 50 dwellings. The site is a brownfield site, and officers consider that this makes effective use of such a site. In relation to the impact on residential amenity, the development does not unduly impact on the nearest residential property above Pop World, which is formerly the Reflex building, which is located just here, or on the flats on the other side of the road at Dempster Court, which are located here. A noise assessment has been submitted for potential noise from the road network and the adjacent late night bar at Pop World. This noise report demonstrates that with suitable mitigation, acceptable noise levels can be achieved within the apartments. Environmental Protection do not object to the scheme, subject to the imposition of conditions as set out on your agenda. The site is within the Nuneaton Town Centre Conservation Area, which is highlighted here by this red line. That's the application site, and the bigger red line around the outside is the conservation area boundary. The proposed design, which the front elevation is here, that you can see, and is largely the same as was approved under the last planning application, with some minor changes proposed. The building fronts both Vicarage Street and Church Street and is a mix of 2.5, 3 and 4 stories in height. As I've just said, the site is within the town centre conservation area and it's close to listed buildings over the road at the St Nicholas Church. A heritage statement has been submitted to assess the impact of the proposal. This concludes that the existing site, pre-development, does not contribute positively to the setting of the listed buildings or the conservation area. The council actually assessed the whole conservation area in 2009, and the outcome of this was the plan that you can see in front of you, that there are negative features in this area, such as the poor visual amenity of Mill Street, which this site is next to, the lack of a coherent townscape along Church Street, which this site fronts, and the temporary appearance and poor landscaping of the large surface car parks and the shops that were on the site. It is considered that, like the last application, the building will help to remove those negative aspects and would actually enhance the town centre conservation area. As you are also aware, the site borders George Eliot Gardens, and it's considered, like the last application, that this considerably improves views from George Eliot Gardens. The plan before you shows that this elevation here is the small bit in the centre that would be immediately visible from George Eliot Gardens. This elevation here is that larger elevation there. And this elevation is the blue one, which is the narrow elevation there, immediately adjacent to George Eliot Gardens. There are a mixture of building heights in the area, and this building will not significantly appear out of character. The scale, height and massing of the building, along with the proposed materials, are acceptable and haven't changed from the last approved application. The approved application for 50 apartments included a communal area and a terrace on the 3rd floor. So this plan here shows this is the communal lounge and that's the terrace that was outside. This has been omitted in the current application, which is this layout, and is being replaced by a 1-bedroom apartment. Now I know that you'll spot plot 52 there on the plan and you're thinking, 51 dwellings, why is there a plot 52? It's because the developer doesn't provide for a number 13 within their development. Now there are associated design changes to the rear elevation, which are the replacement of the glazed terrace, so that was the originally approved rear elevation in that location, so that's what it looked like, and that's what it's going to look like, with 2 French windows. These are in keeping with the others on this elevation. Other design amendments are the introduction of windows at 1st and 2nd floors in previously blank elevations on the gable projections to the rear. So this is the approved scheme with blank elevation here, and those are on the wings of the property. And now they're showing windows in these locations here and here. There are also other minor alterations in that there's an additional roof light to the roof slope facing Church Street and smaller roof lights than already approved on the east elevation. There's also a minor amendment to the roof form on the southwest and southeast parts of the roof. All of these changes to the previously approved design are considered to be acceptable. Access to the site has also not changed from the previously approved application. This is to be off Mill Street in this location, and the current access to the car park from Church Street, which is up here somewhere, is to be closed off. The development provides for 31 parking spaces. These are shown in orange along this boundary and black closer into the site. The loss of the public car park for development has already been established by the granting of planning permission for the development of the 50 apartments. Warwickshire County Council Highways consider that the application could lead to an extra 3 vehicular movements per day on the highway network, which is not significant. Considering the site is within the town centre and in a sustainable location, close to shops and other facilities, and is directly on a bus route and close to Nuneaton railway station, it's therefore considered that the additional apartment will not significantly impact on the road safety of the area or increase the need for on-site parking. Policy H3 of the adopted borough plan, which is a saved policy, requires there to be 25% affordable housing provided for developments of 15 dwellings or more. The developer states that for viability reasons they cannot provide any of the Section 106 contributions, the same as the last application. To confirm this, a viability assessment has been submitted, and this has been scrutinised by the Council's Principal Land and Property Officer. The conclusion is that despite the additional dwelling, the viability assessment is sound, and they agree that the development cannot provide any of the Section 106 contributions requested. It's considered that the lack of Section 106 contributions must therefore be balanced against the other positive parts of the scheme. As with the previously approved scheme, it presents an opportunity to secure the first new build residential development in the town centre. It demonstrates developer commitment and confidence as a place to invest and would act as a catalyst for further development in the town centre. The development contributes to the wider redevelopment of the wider Vicarage Street area, and benefits of the development do outweigh the lack of Section 106 payments. What also must be borne in mind is that the site already has permission for 50 apartments without any Section 106 obligations, and there's no evidence to suggest that the additional dwelling will make the scheme financially viable or viable enough to contribute to any of the requested amounts of money or affordable housing. There's therefore no planning grounds to refuse the application on this basis. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, as set out on the agenda and addendum, and subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Claire, there's no speakers on this, so to enable debate to take place, can I move the recommendation, which is now slightly altered on the addendum, which just removes the legal agreement part. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Any member? Councillor Humphrey.
Well, it's pretty obvious really that the only real difference, other than the fact that there's not going to be that communal area on the top floor, is the aspect of visual appearance. On these illustrations, the major thing seems to be that all the facades seem to be darker. Is this down to the developer, or is it just a quirk of the reprographic system, or what?
It's just a difference in how the plans have been provided. I mean, Claire will confirm. We have got materials agreed, have we?
Yeah, materials already been approved as part of the application for the 50 apartments, and there is a condition on this recommendation that those materials are used if this application is approved.
So the actual...
It's just a difference in the drawings, I think.
Right,
It's
so
different
the brickwork
architects
would
as well.
be no different from the previous one. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. I have got concern over the loss of the communal area. I mean, when the developer came last time, it's a shame he's not here today, said how welcome the communal area is, how the tenants were going to work with the residents in there, how nice it'd be for them to have a space overlooking the park, and then all of a sudden it's gone to put in another apartment, which worries me slightly. I know we can't do anything about the 106 agreements, and in terms, but I know that those apartments are going to sell for around 190,000 to 250. So I worry about the viability assessment, and I would appreciate you maybe if we could do an session on that, because I'm getting more and more concerned as more applications are coming in, and suddenly they don't want to pay 106 agreements. The well-being...
Sorry, just to interrupt, it seems a fair idea as part of one of our future training sessions to include something on viability.
to squeeze another flat in. I worry about the well-being of those residents on floor 3, and they've got no, you know, they're in the flat and they've got to go all the way down to the ground floor if they want to speak or see with people. So I think in terms of well-being and the amenity value of those flats to suddenly go down. I can't say I'm very happy with the new design, taking out the terrace. I think just looks a bit straight up and down, I think is the expression I'd use anyway, comfortable with the Borough, but they are my concerns. And I think it's more around the well-being and the amenity value for those tenants that are going to be in that building.
Councillor Linda.
These are apartments, aren't they, for over 55? So that means that people that are going to go into these apartments are going to be able-bodied. So there's no means for nurses or assistants or anything in the building. Because my other concern is, you know, it really is on a busy main road. So I was thinking if there were any elderly people, you know, coming out of those, you know, I've walked by there today, and it, you know, because you're coming down, aren't you, from the hamburger roundabout, that's what we call it, isn't it? You know, and it really is quite congested around there with traffic. So my concern was that this wouldn't become eventually a care home or something, that everybody in there will be able-bodied and full faculty, if you like.
I think it's restricted to over 60s rather than over 55s anyway. But in terms of that, it's not proposed that this be used for a C2 care home. These are individual apartments for occupation by people who are just above a certain age limit. So there's no element of care that's being provided on the site, so there's no proposal for a care home.
If there was in the future, they would have to come back for a change of use.
Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to declare another interest in that I begin transforming the Nuneaton cross-council working group, which this is sort of under the umbrella of.
It is, yeah.
So I'll declare that, and although I'm sitting here with another hat on, I think they tie in quite nicely, because if we do want to get the centre of Nuneaton transformed and brought into the 21st century and keep it viable, then some element of regeneration is going to be absolutely necessary. And I think that's what we said at the last meeting in February as well, when there were some concerns. It is regrettable that we can't get any 106 contributions. I actually agree with Councillor Shepherd that I'm not overly fond of the change of cramming in an extra apartment at the expense of some communal facilities. But is it enough to refuse it on? I don't think so. If we did, we would certainly lose at appeal, I would suspect. And I think the overall aim of transforming Nuneaton, if we are, as a council, are serious, and as councils are serious about doing this, I think it's an element of holding our nerve, voting for it, and trying to use this as the catalyst we want it to be across all sections of the community to actually getting Nuneaton transformed. And I know, having been involved in those discussions, that this is what we are hoping to use that as a catalyst, and it delivers an aspiration and aim for this borough council of actually transforming the council and transforming the town centre, and actually providing very much needed elderly accommodation. I know 60 odd isn't elderly nowadays. I said that to my grandmother, she'd probably slap me. But as you get older, your needs change about what you need in the house, and this will accommodate that. So I think with that little issue, I'm happy to vote for it on balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal having that loss of community room, but I think there's a balance to be struck between the loss of that and the new design, if you want to call it. There's a few more windows taking away the blackness of the brickwork. It's that, I said at the last meeting I had issues about the lack of contributions. I'm not totally convinced they were right there. But we've got professional advice. There's nobody else. The recommendation is as what's on the addendum, to grant planning permission to the conditions subject to the conditions printed, that's the first. All those in favour of that? And against? Okay, that's approved. I believe that's covered all the planning applications in front of us today. There's no urgent items to discuss. Can I thank you for your attendance? Declare the meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair.